Hey folks, it's Joy from Koodoos with another video about everything college admissions. Today we're going to be talking about ACT, SAT scores and which test score you should submit if you take both tests and get a similar score, like say a 34 on the ACT and a 1500 on the SAT. Don't forget to like this video and also subscribe to the YouTube channel to get the latest videos when I upload them. Right when I upload them, click that notification bell. I give info on the latest college admissions news, insider strategies, tips. I'm talking personal statements, cover letters, what to do on a college visit, what you should do if you're put on the waiting list. Should you take that gap year? All that info. Subscribe, click the notification bell so you can know right when I upload the videos. If you're planning on going to college anytime soon, you need to subscribe to this channel. Alright, now that that's over, let's get to the topic of the day. ACT, SAT scores, and which one should you send to the college? Now, I'm going to give you my perspective both as a test taker, early 2000s, I'm not that old, and as an admissions reader. I've worked at the UW for the last 3 years, and so I'm going to kind of talk about how I view which test score you should submit from that perspective. So I grew up in Louisiana, and as a high school student, I only ever really heard about the ACT, or maybe that's selective memory. Because I remember when I was in high school, if you took the SAT and you got the answers wrong, then you would get points taken off. That's not the case anymore. So selective memory here again, I took the ACT, and I think I was like more comfortable with the ACT. The scoring scale is a lot easier to understand. It goes from, I don't think anybody gets a 0, but let's just say it goes from about, the lowest test score you might get is like a 10 up to a 36. Whereas the SAT, let's say minimum score, if you write your name and you get a couple answers right, you might get an 800 all the way up to 1600 with the current reconfigured test scale that came out over the last couple of years. The ACT did a big reconfiguration, so it goes to 1600 before, whereas previously I think it went to 2400. So growing up in Louisiana, I took the ACT. Both the colleges I applied to, LSU and West Point, took the score, so I honestly didn't think about taking the SAT. And for all those reasons, as a test taker, I'm much more familiar with the ACT score, and I'm telling all this backstory for a reason. So let's, shoot ahead 15 years to the present, and as an admissions reader, I have to understand and know how to interpret both sets of scores. I have to know what a 20 is on the ACT and what that equivalent score is on the SAT. I need to know what it means if a student gets a 35 on the ACT. I mean, pretty smart. That's a really high score. And if they get a 1500, what does that mean? What percentage does that put the student in? Are they qualified to attend UW? Of course they are with a 1500 or a 34. That's a very high score. That's a very good score. So as an admissions reader, I have to I understand both scores. But when a student, an applicant submits both scores and their equivalent score is 35 and 1500 on the SAT again, I default I look at the ACT score first, and that is simply because I'm more familiar with the ACT rubric. I'm more familiar with what a 34 means. I'm more familiar with the test taking strategies behind the ACT. But that doesn't mean that I, as an admissions reader, I discount the SAT score. But it's easier on my heart. It's easier on my brain. If I could just use the ACT score to assess a candidate, just because I understand the test better. So I say all to say, that's just me though. I could understand a person on the opposite side another admissions officer, another admissions reader who reads 1,000 applications every admission cycle, and they took the SAT and they understand the SAT. And so that person may default to using the SAT score, whether it's equivalent or not. Now, every admissions officer isn't created the same. So you may have you may submit 2 test scores. In ACT, let's say you submit a 30 ACT score, and then you also submit a 1200 SAT score. They're not really equivalent. That is a much higher ACT score if you were to put them side by side. But that admissions officer may not really or feel the need to go and figure out what that 20 or 24 on the ACT means. Should they? Yes. But will they? It's up for debate. So, at the end of the day, an admissions officer is a person. An admissions officer does have fault. So my recommendation is always, especially if a college takes both scores, my recommendation to you is to submit both scores. Submit your ACT, submit your SAT, and hope that the admissions officer, not hope, it really shouldn't, it really shouldn't be chalked up to hope, but let's hope, again, I think that's the only word I can use at this point, that they understand both an ACT score, the ACT score, and the SAT score. Let's go back to the original example. You got a 34 ACT and a 1500 SAT. Submit both scores. Submit both scores no matter what. Because you might end up with an admissions officer who's like, oh, that's a really great ACT score. They're doing great. And on the flip side, you may end up with a admissions officer who more easily, and I won't say they're avoidant of interpreting ACT scores, but like me, that admissions officer may have been an SAT coach, taken the SAT as a student, and so submit both scores. This is kind of the part where, it's on the admissions officer, the admissions reader, to properly interpret your score. Just because you submit a 34 ACT and a 1500 SAT doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be interpreted as equivalent scores. Just because, we're all human and folks have a better understanding of different tests based on their experience and knowledge of the test. So if you have equivalent scores, definitely submit both. If you got like a 16 on the ACT and a 1400 on the SAT, that does happen. Some folks, it happens. You may have taken the ACT in your junior year and then waited until senior year to take the SAT, and so you might just have very different scores. In that case, do not submit that low score. You're better off just submitting the high score. But if you have equivalent test scores, 34 ACT, 1500 SAT, you should definitely submit both tests. And I say that because all admissions officers are not created equal, and some may default to one or the other and not necessarily understand the latter. So that's it for today. That's my take on it. As a test taker, I'm in love with the ACT, and I get it. As an admissions reader, I have to understand both tests, but if both are submitted, I default to the ACT score. I understand it much more readily. I favor it, if I'm being honest. But of course, I do put equal weight on both test scores. ACT is just easier for me to understand. So submit both, and you should be good to go. Until next time, Koodoos. Check out the website, koodooslearning.com. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.